thank you very much. I'm just going to do a quick presentation, and I'm going to invite the panelists. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I mean, you already got introduced. So yesterday, here actually, we have announced our 3.0 Applied AI cohort. And hopefully you like the animation as much as I do. It's a bit cheesy. So we've got 32 amazing companies, quite diverse, from health tech to femtech to autonomous vehicles to analytics. Amazing companies, actually, like we can go through the details. 32, as mentioned, 47% of them are based outside of London. Average number of employees, they've got around 12. They raise around 1.58 million on average, and 44% of them have female founders, which is great because, unfortunately, we have data that in the industry, the average is 23% founders in a deep tech, which is not that great. So we are very happy with having the 50-50. Hopefully one day soon, that would be fantastic. And around 300K average revenue these companies have. As you see, like on the map, they are quite diverse now in terms of their location, from Scotland to Northern Ireland to different areas. Obviously, like given London and the power of London, we've got 17 of them based here. In terms of the subsectors, given the 2020 and the turbulences that we have experienced, given the COVID, the investment has gone into the health tech, and rightfully so. So hopefully these companies can predict the next pandemic. So therefore, we've got almost a third of the companies selected for applied AI for technician in health tech and biotech, followed by data and analytics and a vast majority of the other subsectors. And many of the companies, they would like to expand into US, Germany, Australia, and Canada, and France and China. So let's dive deep into, not briefly perhaps, into these companies. The first one is AI Gnostics. And given that many individuals that have neurodegenerative diseases, and myself actually in my family, we have unfortunately dementia, and therefore I really look forward to tech companies looking into how they can fix this before I get to that age. So definitely companies such as AI Gnostics, that they're leading on that term to find out the best solutions for predicting and solving the neurodegenerative diseases such as dementia is very important. Next one is Chimera. I mean, first time I come across this company, I thought that they came out of science fiction, right? So smart textile, wearing smart textile that can take all the information from your, basically your heartbeat and other information perhaps you can utilize for your health app. It's amazing, right? So they utilize this technology in sports, but they're expanding also into the healthcare and health tech, which is great. So you can actually, your doctor can take on the information on 24/7 basis. So that's fantastic to know. Next one, we have Libra Eats. As mentioned previously, I have quite a lot of problems in my family. So one of them, another one is myself, I've got, in terms of the food, I cannot eat all the foods. I cannot eat almonds, for example. But it deliberates to actually go through all the recipes and the areas, for example, for food to figure out how to predict that. So we can actually watch a video on that.
Libra Eats is a technology business with a mission for good.
Libra Eats is one of those rare opportunities to have a business which is both good for society and a good business.
Libra Eats provides bespoke menus, products and recipe options for people with dietary requirements. The Libra Eats technology acts as an allergen safety blanket.
The future potential for Libra Eats, I think, is huge, and it transcends hospitality, supermarkets and recipes.
Libra Eats, making food easy for everyone.
That's great. Next one is Wild AI. Well, that might be a bit controversial, but women are not men. And yeah, probably you didn't know that. But in terms of, again, why they meant that the women are not men, but the world didn't know about it, is because 80% of the medical research is still done on male mice. And Wild AI research on what is a woman is translated into their app, serving women from menstruation to menopause. So it's very important to have increase in the femtech and understanding how the difference between that. Again, 80% of the medical and male mice is not great, right, isn't it? Because we don't understand the half of the population properly in the science. So that's great to have a company to represent that into the cohort. Next one is Optimal. So Optimal are actually building and deploying fully autonomous greenhouses at sort of every city. So these are fully autonomous with robotics, and it's amazing, right? So again, given that the carbon emission of the cars and transportation for, again, food, it takes a lot of carbon emission. If we have greenhouses outside, so this is very important, right? So therefore, again, it's a great company that they're building fantastic solutions, fully autonomous greenhouses. Fantastic. Next one is Deep Planet. Deep Planet, it's a great company. It's actually like they're tackling climate change and helping growers and winemakers to build resiliency against effects of climate change. Deep Planet uses something called Wine Signal that they made. It's a SaaS-based AI platform using satellite imagery and IoT solutions data that helps growers and where to harvest. So again, given that the world we live in and the situation we are facing at the moment with the climate crisis, it's very important to have a net zero strategy for all of the companies, not just the companies that are focusing only on perhaps climate change, such as Deep Planet, but all the companies. So it's great to see that, again, given the COP26 is in 40 days, the focus of the companies should be there and understand how we can improve. So please welcome the panelists. We've got fantastic panelists today for you. Maya Pindeos, co-founder and CEO of Humanizing Autonomy, Darko Motovsky, founder and CEO of Causal Lens, and Mark Hudson, Chief of Partners at Service. Please welcome the panelists. Thank you very much. Well, welcome today. Thank you very much for coming. Well, the first question is actually an intro. I would love you to intro yourself because usually I'd get it wrong. So yeah, it's better for you to intro yourself. Starting with you, Mark.
Afternoon, everyone. My name's Mark Hodgson. I work at a company called Servest. Servest is an AI-powered climate intelligence company. We're developing a platform that essentially is aimed at tackling one of the biggest problems facing humanity, which is climate. We're seeing increasing financial consequences of an increasingly unpleasant, uncertain, and worrying trends in climate, and that's having financial consequences on livelihoods and businesses and organizations around the planet. So our thesis is this: what if we were to use combination of AI and machine learning to understand the precise and real-time relationship between climate and what it's doing and its impact, physical impact, but also transitional impact on each and every built and natural asset on the planet, so that then we can start to understand the relationship between climate at any moment in time with those assets. And those assets are shared and managed by each of us. So we're basically on that journey, and that's basically Servest.
Hi, my name is Maya Pindeos. I'm CEO and co-founder of Humanizing Autonomy. We're a computer vision company that enables machines to interact with people. So what does it mean? One of the biggest challenges in AI and automation today is that systems, machines, and by machine with any sense are not able to really understand what people are doing, what people are likely to do, how people are acting around machinery, whether we're talking about cities, construction sites, manufacturing places, real estate, and so on. Wherever there's automation, systems need to be able to understand how people are acting in order to be more productive, be safer, particularly safer, and trustworthy around people. So what we provide is a behavior AI platform that is able to ingest and draw insights around people's and their environment, predict future behavior from any video, any camera, no matter what resolution, no matter what device, no matter what platform, no matter what hardware, we're able to sit on top of that. And really the vision here is to be able to enable any connected device to be safer with people, to propagate AI that is centered around people. And with that, we have creating an incremental step towards automation where people are at the center of the loop. So a couple of examples here. What that really means is making urban infrastructure safer. Infrastructure, making sure that there's fewer accidents and in roadsides, there's few accidents with cars, a few accidents at construction sites. At the same time, making sure to build trust, that people are able to trust automation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Darko, and I'm the CEO of Causal Lens. At Causal Lens, we pioneered causal AI, which enables machines to reason for the first time, very much like humans can, through cause and effect relationships and imagination. We're using this, we've had a lot of breakthroughs to get here. My team is the smartest, I think, on the planet. We have 50% of our team are PhDs. We've worked very hard. We've been a little bit lucky as well to have incredible breakthroughs that have enabled us to create the world's first causal AI platform, which has incredible potential to empower humans to make better decisions by partnering with the AI. The biggest trouble of today's technologies, AI technologies, is that they simply match patterns in historical data. And when they do that, they essentially treat the world like a set of random numbers. They have no idea where the numbers come from, what they mean, what they represent. And so by creating machines that can reason about the world like humans, we can create trustworthy human-machine partnerships for the first time. And we use this incredible technology in a lot of domains. We use it to help improve our economy. We use it to help us improve our society. And we've also deployed it in healthcare, for example, in the discovery of cancer biomarkers. And if you'd like to learn more, I would be very happy to chat to you more about it. But now let's go to the interesting questions.
Oh, fantastic. As you have the mic, it would be great to know what is your journey to date and how did you get to your current stage?
Yeah, so we've been going for just over 4 years. Max and I, Max is my co-founder, started Causal Lens with a very, very clear vision. So you can see it's in the name, causal lens that can see causality. We were convinced from day zero that correlation-based machine learning will reach its potential. And there will be a day when the world will need machines that can reason and can understand cause and effect. And so we started with that. Of course, when we started, it was still in the era of deep learning, and everybody was very excited about AlphaGo and things like that, which are obviously a great start, but they are games after all. The real world is not a game. And just blindly applying these deep learning techniques that pick up correlations from past data doesn't help you solve real-world problems. And so we started on this very, very bold vision to bring causal AI to the world. There was a lot of R&D in the early stages. We're very lucky to hire some incredibly bright people. And we were also very lucky to have a couple of breakthroughs, very, very big scientific breakthroughs, which represent like a huge leap in AI technology. This is not some marginal improvement. This is not one algorithm that we tweak. This is a giant leap in AI technology. And that's where we spend most of our time in the early days of figuring out how to create this new generation of intelligent machines. And then, of course, later in the journey, we started putting that into a product, and that culminated in the world's first causal AI platform. So then, we brought in a lot of product people, engineering resources, and now we're at a stage where we are building the go-to-market machine to help the world at large to benefit from this wonderful technology.
Fantastic, thank you. I would like to ask the same questions from the other panelists.
Cool. Well, quite similar. 4 years for us as well. We started 2017, and wow, we've grown a lot. We're close to 40 people today. Most of us based in London, some in Japan. Really expanding into North America and Asia Pacific at the moment. Well, part of a journey, like probably many startups are, right? It was all started with the conviction and understanding that in 2017. To me, that seems like a really long time ago. I know it isn't, it's just 4 years. But the discourse around artificial intelligence really has changed. Back then, the world made it sound like self-driving cars are here. Robotic automation is all done. Everything is ready. 2019, 2020, our cities will be full of self-driving vehicles. Construction sites and manufacturing places will be fully automated, supply chain, and so on. Didn't happen. It didn't happen because no one was talking and thinking about, well, there's also, us human beings, and it's not, testing automation in areas where there are no people will not allow us to take the leap and actually work in pedestrianized and dense areas where we operate. So essentially, the human being was taken out of the equation. So that was a realization we've had very early on. Before we even incorporated the company, we were researching, doing the first, the foundations of what our products are now. Starting with that, we understood that the way artificial intelligence is built needs to change. It needs to be human-centered, it needs to be modular, ethical, interpretable, understandable. And from there, we started building our AI platform, but we also understood that it's very important to be embedded in today's market, if you will. To build something that is relevant for future society, it really needs to be deeply ingrained into society today. So that means we started very early on, really deploying in the urban market, meaning with fleets, partnerships with Transport for London, partnership with Airbus in the aviation sector, really working on being deployed widely in cities, first across Europe, then starting in the US and now also in Japan. So it's really around an incremental step towards automation, making sure that there's value added and there's really deployment today.
That's fantastic, thank you. Mark, you have a great background. You've been executive at Google. What made you to actually come and start working at Servest? What was basically the Eurocom moment?
Yeah, okay, so I'm not going to diss Google because I've got a lot to thank for it. In making me challenge what I was, what I believed in, and the power of some of the technologies that we produced. But essentially, it distilled down to one thing, which is, am I really here to operate every day and every night on a business that matters? Or am I here to think and basically put all my efforts into a business that matters to me? It really was as simple as that. And I felt that the area that I was in, which is a fundamental and important part of the way enterprises work, which is cloud computing, is phenomenally important. No question about it. And it can be applied to millions of different use cases for good. But for me, I wanted to get close to the coalface. And I'd been at university like 105 years ago. And we did not have the computational power to fix the problems that we were wanting to fix as naive, like 20, 21-year-olds, which was how do we relate the value of natural capital left alone compared to if it's processed? How do we understand the impact for the next 70, 80, 90, 100 years of chopping down that bunch of trees over there or building that piece of that building over there? We just hadn't got the computational power to see the relationship between our activities and the causal, almost virtuous or not virtuous, vicious cycle with climate. So I just wanted to get back to that, and it took a journey. I had to literally jump out of corporate into startups, learn startups fail, learn startups fail, and finally I had the guts to work at Servest.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. Mark, next question is, don't drop it. Well, great time to drop it, to be honest. Well, yeah, drop the mic. Next is question like, how did you get to your current stage in terms of the company, in terms of service?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so very quickly, we're 5 years old. We're at Series A now. We're slowly moving towards a Series B investment round. We've always been vision-led. Always been vision-led. And I think AI and ML has allowed us to do that, and let me explain why. For the first time, I think this is the sort of technology that can really, really, really mean you can throw the old SAS rulebook away. Why? Because you can think about building categories faster than ever before and leading them faster than ever before, and thinking globally. Our model was never MVP, build a skateboard, go to the next step, build the car kind of model. It was in other startups, and that's perfectly reasonable. But I think because we're an AI-first company, we looked at this and said, we just want to basically create the entire opportunity for everyone, every constituent, every asset on the planet to have a symmetrical relationship with climate. And that doesn't start with a sort of a single use case that you're then told by your investors, build that, prove it, scale it. It doesn't work like that. It didn't start with an MVP in the classic sense of a specific area. So we have basically used our 5.5 years of research and development and our subsequent Series A. We're only 27% PhDs, I'm afraid. To really understand how we can globally create a global category symmetrically everywhere. So the investors that we're asking for are mission-led too. There is capital now out there for the business that we're in that has hitherto never been in it. So we're very lucky and it's very timely. Now, I'm not trying to lend our success to the crap that's out there, all these terrible disasters. But unless we do something and people understand the risks that lie ahead of us, $3.6 trillion of financial losses over the last 50 years, most of that in developed countries, right? And we have not got our act together to understand how the exponential growth of those financial losses is going to incur. And that's livelihoods, that's society, that's not just rich banks. So we need to be thinking about this in a very different way. So our investors are, we are, our investment trajectory is very different. If I was to say to you, we're pre-rev, we are, because we're still building out the business and we're still making sure that we get traction fast. And so there's a very, very specific type of patient capital, mission-led capital that's out there, but it is growing. And I encourage businesses here who are thinking about this to look at those companies because they are there.
Fantastic, thank you, Mark. Maya, I've got a question for you. And this is, what does it mean to be an AI company for you?
Well, there's a lot of different interpretation meanings of AI. For me, what it means really is we're defining, working on something where I guess the wider public doesn't quite know what it's. I think literally no one really knows. What are the implications? How can we be at the forefront of shaping what AI means? I think for a long time it's been, it's a word. It looks nice. It's being used in many startups, many events, and so on. But if you look one layer down and try to understand what level of AI should be good for society, this is where it gets interesting in my view, and this is where, as companies, startups, scale-ups, as companies, we have a big opportunity of shaping that. So that means, alongside building the products, the technology, it's also about almost creating a new market, about creating a new awareness. It involves thought leadership. It involves shaping understanding not just of our industry segments, but of the wider public. So in our case, for instance, yes, AI needs to be interpretable, explainable. It needs to be ethical. It needs to be built around people. It needs to be modular so you can understand why decisions are being taken. And it needs to be applicable, well, I guess, across any segment where people operate and machines operate. So that's really what it means to us. So essentially, you need to, it's about the foundations, how you build it and how you communicate it and how you shape a market doing so. And I guess that's a nice thing about AI, because it's still almost like a, canvas. I wouldn't say blank canvas, but a lot to be shaped. And it's a great opportunity for companies like ours in this field of really being at the forefront of it.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. Darko, what makes leading an AI scale-up different from other scale-ups? What's the difference?
So one of the fundamental things that an AI startup needs compared to non-AI scale-up is access to talent. It's talent, everybody talks about it, but it really is a big deal when it comes to AI. Now, I want to distinguish between companies that use AI as a marketing buzzword and companies that are actually fundamentally changing the direction of the field. If you are just, company AI for something, that's, AI for a particular use case, you can leverage open source methodologies, and you don't need necessarily the best scientists and engineers to do that. It's relatively easy, is relatively democratized, and so on and so forth. But when you're trying to do something that is quite extraordinary and move the field from where we're now to something that actually makes a huge impact, you need fundamental changes in the technology, and you cannot rely on things which are in the open source. And to make that huge shift from what I call correlation-based machine learning that just looks at patterns and machines that actually can reason and understand and we can incorporate in society, to do that, you need talent. And just to give you one statistic, last year we had 20,000 applications for 20 or 30 spots in our team. That's kind of the level. 0.1% is the acceptance rate that we're operating in to find people that can actually, contribute to this major leap in the technology. And so, to answer your question in a bit of a long-winded way, I think talent is fundamental for AI scale-ups. And talent, of course, is always important for other companies, but it's not the fundamentals. Perhaps other things like sales and marketing tactics may move the needle more, but in our world, proper fundamental change of this technology, talent is the key ingredient.
Fantastic. Just before you pass the mic, what made you decide to build this category you call causal AI, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with the realization that correlation-based machine learning, which is basically current state of art, is great when the world is very static. So if you're playing a computer game or you're playing the game of Go, you have a fixed board. It's very constrained, and learning patterns from past moves is fine. It's great. You can do a lot with that, and it can appear intelligent. The trouble, though, is when people assume that they can take these techniques that kind of big tech companies have produced for their own needs, which is, in the case of a lot of data, very constrained environments, and when they think they could just take that and apply it to a use case in the real world, which is kind of completely opposite of a board game or a computer game. The real world is very messy. There's a lot of human beings acting both rationally and irrationally. The world is really complex. And so the trouble is when you try to blindly apply those pattern matching machines, these correlation-based machines, into the real world, that's when you have a lot of trouble. And that's when you lose the trust. So we are right now at the stage where humans do not trust existing approaches. And we've known this for a while now, and that's kind of what motivated us to start Causal Lens, to build machines that humans can trust and can use to solve the biggest challenges we're facing, whether it's in society, the wider economy, and health as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Maya, similar question, but a bit different in terms of like how, in terms of like you mentioned that humanizing autonomy works on predicting human behavior through computer vision. And how can you do that ethically? And what that means for humanizing autonomy?
Yeah, I mean, ethics and privacy is a really big part, critical part here. So essentially what we do is we're able to take any video, whether it's from a mobile device or any camera in a vehicle, and static camera, any type of video, they're able to extract different behaviors and infer human behavior from it, how people interact with the environment. So to give you an example, in a road environment, is there likelihood of an accident, for instance, with a truck that's coming around the corner? Or in a construction or manufacturing place, is there a risk of a collision? But equally, is the interaction working in a way that is productive for both parties? So essentially what we do is that we're able to extract behaviors and intent, really. So it's almost computing what is in people's mind, like the intent of someone, and helping machines understand that better. To do so, it's really important that, on one hand, and the ethical part, I mentioned interpretability. So meaning that our platform, our models are interpretable. You can understand the decision making of a system. That's really important for us, I think, to understand that there's no black box AI program out there that where data comes in, decision comes out, but it's actually modular. You can understand the decision making. That's critical. It's also critical as we deploy into existing devices, we deploy into new systems, and so on. So the interpretability is important, but also to extract behaviors from a computer, from vision. You don't need to know anything about a person, no personal information, nothing that could relate back to someone's identity or anything. So that's really critical. That's also when I spoke earlier about the thought leadership, about shaping perception of a sector, that you can infer a lot of understanding and behavior of people in a very, very data private way. And there again, being proactive about it, being vocal about it, what information is being shared, what not, and that you can, and we are providing ethical, data private behavioral analytics that are fully transparent. So that's the ethical component.
Thank you, Maya. Mark, Mark, you in Service, you talk about climate intelligence, right? What do you mean by climate intelligence at Service?
Yeah, sure. I think it touches a little bit on what Darko was saying in terms of the difference between just building up AI capability and extracting information out of data. The intelligence lies in understanding what that data actually means. We, like any company that has large data sets, are trying to make sense of it. And so we've deployed a proprietary AI, statistical modeling and AI team to develop out the relationships that you can see in real time between the combined data that we get from Earth Sciences, satellite, and other sources, to then present back to you what is the likely scenario that your asset will face at any moment in time for the next 80 years. So the intelligence is really a word that we're using because it's about making decisions. We want to move from data gathering and information that can't be interpolated or interpreted to a point where it will automatically start to tell you what the recommendations are given your circumstances. And given this is machine learning, those recommendations might change. I mean, this is difficult for some people to grasp, myself included, which is the information that I'm giving you at any moment in time is the very best information we can give you. But that doesn't mean that next year it's going to be different for two reasons. One, an exponential feedback loop is occurring. So the more data that we have ingested across multiple users, the more information we're going to get back. The second is that it is constantly learning as more data from different sources comes in as well. So essentially, provided that we can give at any moment in time a business or an organization the very best understanding of what to do with any specific business driver, be it strategic planning, where to locate a housing estate, where to locate an office block, what to do with terms of materials and composition of that building, which supply chains that I'm relying on, either on behalf of a nation state or as a big global company, should I be thinking about? The intelligence behind that is constantly moving, adapting, and reinforcing. The other thing is, of course, that the intelligence is democratized. We want everybody on the planet should have access to a basic level of climate security. And that in itself means that we need to have this global wrapper of almost like an operational layer of intelligence on top.
Thank you, Mark. What was the biggest challenge for scaling your company to current stage?
A pivot. So Iggy Bassi is our founder and CEO, and I've known him for longer than Sylvester has been existing. So he started out, look at his CV. I mean, he was an economist at Cambridge. He then moved into being an investor. He then moved into banking. He then became a rice farmer in Ghana. And that was his moment. After 2 successful seasons of production, he realized that actually he cannot control, mitigate, or adapt to what is coming around him. The seasons, the precipitation, the heat, etc., etc. And so we started by thinking, what is the relationship between climate and predicting crop yields? And we will come back to that. But what we then decided to do is, you know what? More capital, more risk, more financial consequence is actually tied up in built assets. So we actually trained our models on crop predictions, and then we pivoted towards looking at climate hazards and risks on physical built assets. And that was when we got the attention of the investors upon whom we rely. And we're now going to be building out that capability and then returning to natural capital as well. Because natural capital assets and built assets are the full complement of assets that we have on the planet. And they are intrinsically linked in every supply chain that we rely on and our livelihoods depend upon. So that's how we did it. It was a pivot, but it was a very, very emotional thing. You're dealing with a founder who's very, 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 very much and we'd hired a load of crop scientists, and we'd hired a load of earth scientists that were focusing in on agriculture. You know, a pivot is more than just a word in startup lexicon. It's emotional, and it has an effect on people.
Well, thank you, Mark. Same question for you.
Well, I guess two things. So on one hand, we're humanizing autonomy. We're talking about building this global standard of human-machine interactions. Any sensor is essentially a machine. Automation is coming into every sector. So where do you start? So that's a decision that needs to be conviction-driven, data-driven, and going through this journey with my co-founders, with my team, it has been really exciting and really, really important, right? And we arrived at as, yes, this is critical for any robot out there. But as those robots develop, we're seeing incremental steps towards automation. And there's so much stuff happening today, like, every second someone dies on the road, accidents everywhere. So how can we make this platform usable, applicable to challenges we see right now today as we build out and start deploying for wider robotics? So that's number one. So that's defining this point of entry and where to expand from. The other one is team, right? So talking about startups, it's all about, yes, everything going really fast, really quickly, and so on. But with a big vision, you need to build the foundations of a scalable team, a shared culture, buy-in team that everyone has conviction for this common cause, for this common vision. So really building this foundation and really focusing on team growth, culture, and not just in a, let's hire fast way, but actually knowing that we build the foundations here for a large company. So that's the second one I think is really critical.
Fantastic.
I imagine same question. So I completely agree with Maya around the culture and the team. I think that's that's always really really hard at the beginning, and that foundational team dictates the culture the company will have for years to come. So choosing very carefully there, it's really, really important. So that was definitely one of the hardest things we had to get right at the beginning. The other thing that was really hard at the beginning was creating a breakthrough in artificial intelligence. It's not something, it's not a walk in the park. It requires a lot of hard work, a lot of dead ends, and a lot of breakthroughs. And so it's making machine learning work in the lab is relatively easy. Making machine learning working on a very single, on a single use case in the real world is hard but doable. But getting a new category of machines that can reason like humans through cause and effect relationships and making them work in every single instance out there in the real world is really, really tough. So we had to make sure that they work with small data and they work with very large data. We had to make sure that they work in financial time series, and we had to make sure that they work in non-time series problems outside finance. So making it very generic and scalable required a lot of science and a lot of engineering. And we probably had a few lucky moments, but we worked really, really hard to get there. So I think in the early days, creating the right team and culture and the scientific breakthroughs were definitely the hardest.
Fantastic. Darko, what keeps you awake at night? What's your top of your mind?
Ooh, yeah, a lot of things. But I think and I don't think this is specific to us, but for any technology company, not moving fast enough is always top of mind. Because when you're creating a new market, in our case, augmented intelligence, and when stakes are so high, and it's one of these technologies where it's more or less winner takes all. Moving slow means that someone else comes and overtakes you. I always think about my parents buying us the first VHS kind of tape player, just to realize they spent all their savings on it, and a couple of years later no one would use them. There were CD players and things, and a few years later there was no CD players anymore, and there was other things. So I think it's very similar for any technology business, that if you don't innovate continuously, you do not stay ahead of the curve. That's probably the biggest fear. So we're very well aware of that, and although we have many years head start, we want to make sure that we have the right growth partners, investors, employees to help us kind of stay many years ahead of everybody else.
Great answer, thank you. Maya, same question.
Well, the answer is probably similar to the challenges. Because challenges, yeah. Number one, so we've identified just like early growth, this market where we process out what we deploy on, but then staying true to the vision. How do you grow from there? How do you become this horizontally applicable solution? So that definitely keeps me awake at night. It's definitely few big steps ahead, that we're really working towards. And the other one is team growth. We're essentially doubling our team at the moment and making sure that the foundation that we've laid that are really scalable. That we scale the company in a way that just maintains the culture. That really is it's fit for the I guess for growth to come. I think as a CEO, other than of course the financing bits, it really always is around making sure that the team and making sure that the commercial opportunity and the strategy is fit.
Fantastic, thank you, Maya. Yeah, the same question.
Same question. Okay. I mean, I could echo most, if not all, of the points that you've just heard. From a Sylvester specific point of view, though. We've got, I think, 2 years we've worked out to create sufficient defensibility on this extremely high-risk, vision-led approach. We've got to get scale before a business that's got scale gets climate. So our competition is not, I don't know, some of the great other climate risk providers and intelligence businesses that are starting to form around this area. It's the sort of company I used to work for. Or it's an Amazon, or it's a Microsoft, or it's a BlackRock, or it's actually a really smart group of governments. I sometimes joke that we're doing the job of governments because this is about national security and humanity security. It's not necessarily about a winner takes all market. That's not what climate's about, right? We're all stewards for it, and we all need to almost collaborate and co-depend upon the intelligence. So I worry about that. I worry that we're going to be swamped by a company that's just going to flick the switch and convert 5,500 very smart engineers and scientists onto this and do it. So we need that. Our distribution strategy, so I now head up our partnerships because we need to create a network of an ecosystem of interactions, entities that will form the basis of this climate intelligence network across which intelligence flows. If we don't get that climate intelligence ecosystem right, the operational layer that we provide, the data, the climate intelligence, will not scale. So that's our race.
Well, thank you, Mark. What do you predict will happen in next 2 years, Mark? Yeah, still you.
Another question.
What do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years in your industry?
So in our industry, if I could say in the category that we're working in, well, firstly, the point that I just made, that there is going to be a huge melee of really smart, smaller, more agile businesses such as Savest that are trying to get their heads around the connective tissue between climate and the things that matter to us. The unit of currency on that could be asset, it could be financial transactions, repricing risk. These are the things that climate suddenly has a voice at the table. All those risk models that define what the value of your house is, the mortgages, the risk of the assets that you rely upon every day, hasn't got climate component in it. So that's kind of what's going to be happening, and I think it's going to change completely change the risk associated with those assets, the value of those assets, and how we think about assets, and how we think about the supply chains that are so brittle right now that one slight change, as we saw through COVID, can cause catastrophic and unexpected effects on our sense of comfort in going to the shops and getting toilet paper, for example. Well, climate's like that. Climate knows no national boundaries. It's no point me having a national climate strategy and France not, or them being different. Doesn't matter. These are going to be the big issues, and so we need to underpin that with absolutely democratized, open, symmetrical intelligence. That's the aim of the category that is climate intelligence over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Mark. Maya, how can we advance the field of AI collectively?
Collaboration. I think I guess we're still seeing, but we've seen a lot of race, right? There's a thing we've heard, the winner takes all kind of model market. I mean, it's just being used a lot, but ultimately, it's collaboration that needs to. It's the partnership element that is really, really critical. I'll give you one example of. We're quite active also in the connected and autonomous vehicle field and smart infrastructure, smart city field, together with the UK government as well. And ultimately, it's about different parties working together, private companies, public entities, and understanding that if we're talking about challenges of that scale, right? Mark introduced a massive one, like ours as well. Automation is coming. We want it to come in a mindful way. Then it just can't be a massive company just imposing, right? It works for a bit and then it drops. And I think the markets have understood that, and we're seeing much, much more collaboration, attempts to collaboration. I say there's a lot to be done, but I think we're getting there. But yeah, I really think it's collaboration between public and private entities.
Would you think that that would happen within the next 5 to 10 years, or it would be different in your industry?
I definitely think it has to happen because if I look at I guess two distinct markets from the urban mobility, automated vehicle market, the other one, I guess, supply chain automation. We've seen exactly that. The race alone doesn't really get you there. There's so many unknowns. It's so much of a complexity in the technology. It requires multiple parties. So in order to succeed, companies need to collaborate. So I think there's no other way around it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. Darko, what's your spin on that question?
On the next 5 years or on...
Both of them.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think in 5 years, may take us up to 10, we'll see for the first time many parts of society trusting machines to make decisions, and we'll see a lot more human-machine partnerships that are used to solve some of the biggest challenges. I think it will be very naive for us to believe that today's state of art is going to unlock all of these use cases, despite all of the mis-selling of AI. And it's a nice word, so it's nice to put it everywhere. But I think to a certain extent we're mis-selling it and over-promising, under-delivering. I think we dream with my team of a world where we see AI integrated in all aspects of society, and for that to happen, we need this giant leap in technology. We cannot rely on curve-fitting machines that just pick up spurious patterns from the past. We need machines that can reason like us, and so that will, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, it will enable us to create trustworthy human-machine partnerships, and we'll see AI in kind of the fabric of society more broadly. I think collaboration is always great. Me and my team, we contribute regularly to top scientific conferences. We regularly publish at NeurIPS, ICML, and so we share the knowledge in hope to inspire others to dream bigger and go beyond pattern matching machines.
Great, yeah, thank you. Darko, knowing what you know now, what would you go and change when you started?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think we would have hired faster, and we would have also hired more senior people earlier to help us hire even faster. So that's probably one thing that I would do differently.
Awesome. Same question for you, Maya.
I think I need to echo some of what you said. I think we spoke about the foundations earlier. I think making sure that those foundations are strong. I mean, we've an amazing co-founding team, and we've been really working together since the very beginning. But I think it's really important to the culture, the diversity perspective, all of those things. Make sure that they're built in from not day one, day two, let's say. I think that's incredibly important. Not one thing that I would do again, and I could encourage also everyone who's in a startup, is making sure, for instance, our hire number 8, I think, was head of people. And back then we were not really encouraged to doing so. I was like, oh, that's unusual. But that was really, really important in allowing us to make sure that our diversity metrics, the culture component, not just what we would like to do, wishful thinking, but actually gets executed. And so from the beginning was the co-founding team really working on that, and then making sure that there's someone holding us accountable for doing so, and then making sure those foundations are being implemented. So that's what I would do again, or maybe even earlier.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it does come down to culture and some of the things we learned along the way and wish we'd done sooner. Just a couple. The first is, I think this talent race that Darko described is is really quite something. The problems are bigger than the graduates, the number of graduates that are coming out of the universities and the experiences that we're able to provide, both through education and through the workplace. There simply isn't enough talent to go around. So I think if we'd have understood just where this was going sooner and anticipated it, we might have been able to get some people that are now just out of our reach. And so, be bold and courageous in those initial moves, because if as long as you know which way you're going, those hires are critical. Now, we've done really well because we've actually bent our own rules. We've changed our entire working logic to accommodate and ensure that we can have the best chance of getting the best talent. We can't compete on salary necessarily, but we can certainly compete on work flexibility. We're a remote first business, period. So right now we have no HQ. We have an office in London by virtue of happenstance, but we have, wherever there is a scientist that we need to get hold of, we will. One is in a forest, upstate or downstate, downstate Virginia, right? Absolute rock star, and just we manage to make it work because the organization needs to wrap itself around that talent thing. I think if we'd have had that flexibility sooner and been a little less top down, we might have had even more chance of getting those people earlier on. I think the other cultural point, and it comes back to some of the things you've been saying, Maya, having those principles absolutely at the heart of your business from the get-go is so important when you're dealing with a business that is so fundamentally trying to connect human thought and machine thinking, right? The ethics around that are as unknown as some of the predictions we'll be coming up with in 5, 10, 15 years' time. And so we have to have sort of tenets that we understand form the basis of how we want to work. And we did that in sort of year 2 and 3, but I think it would have been great if we'd have set that out in year 1, 2, because the people we invited in would have been very clear on our ethical direction as well, and that's really important. Last point, if I may, cultural institutionalization. There are a lot of business people who've got great titles and really expert, but if they don't fundamentally leave that institutional thinking at the door and can work in the most ambiguous, influx kind of environments possible, they're just gonna collapse in a corner. And it's tough. It really is tough. And I think some people in our business, because they've not been institutionalized by working in bigger tech companies or working in energy companies, but who we need for risk assessment, or some of the academic backgrounds, this is an entirely different culture that's working in a very different way and a very different tempo. And a lot of people having to learn on the job some fundamentals to how to be successful at Savest.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Marco. And this is a question for all the panelists. What are the common misconceptions people have about AI in your field, and how can we combat these misconceptions?
Well, it kind of comes down to what is AI and what people understand about it. I think one thing that I'm seeing on occasion is that I guess the business value of AI, and now I'm talking about a very specific industrial, it's like the business value of AI over other levels of I guess automation, machine learning, and so on, is one really understanding what value can be added and can be created on the widest sense and scale. That's one. I think there's a lot about public awareness, public understanding of AI. I mean, I think a couple of years ago, definitely the public perception caught up around the fears around ethics, fears around the elements of an overtaking AI, singularity, and so on. So I think it's all very nebulous. There's so many different ways of defining the fears and the opportunities and so on. And I think that's what makes it exciting as well, because that allows us as essentially small but fast-growing companies to build a position and to advocate that and to also help define what AI means, what it means for us, and how we think it should be built, and going forward. So it's almost an opportunity.
Brilliant.
Yes, definitely one of the misconceptions is that AI will take over the world anytime soon. I think we can debate that for quite a long time. I think potentially at some point in the future, but I think now those fears are a bit exaggerated. The other misconception is that that AI is kind of ready and everybody's using it. The reality is that in the enterprise specifically, even the most forward-looking enterprises, AI is really limited to data science teams and the data science lab, a dark room somewhere out of sight of business decision makers. And there's a lot of experimentation, but there's very little that makes it to the real world. So we think that, it's a misconception, I think, to believe that we've invented everything, we've used it everywhere. I think the reality is very different. We're really just at the beginning of that journey, and the current technology cannot deliver what we need. It's a good start, but it's primarily in the data science labs, and very seldomly sees the light of day.
Well, it's an exciting beginning, isn't it? Oh, yeah, same question for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. I think it's fast becoming quite a hackneyed term, actually. We all think we know what it is, and then we all describe it, and we all probably come up with some slight nuance. At the end of the day, we need to just describe how our intelligence through our software capabilities can learn with us and on our behalf. And we just need to understand the power of that and its implications. At the end of the day, this is intelligence. It's intelligence that combines the brains in this room and the machinery that we've created that is now starting to self-learn. That is intelligence.
Fantastic. Do you have any advice for the aspiring or future founders in this room?
Okay, so I'm not a founder, or rather, I did once found a company with my sister, but was told to stop it immediately. But I will give some advice to the people in the room who are working for founders. That no one thinks about the business like the founder does. So you've got the founder and then everyone else. You can be really close, but it is rather like bringing up a child. We're the village that brings it up, but there's just one mother, there's one father. And I really sense that. I've worked all my life for founder-led businesses, all my life of different shapes and sizes. And I think that's a very, very important thought to go into. And it's also a thought that works both ways, because the founders need to understand that too. You're inspired by their vision, but you might be inspired by the vision that they're trying to get to, and you're thinking beyond that. And right now, the company is just a stepping stone to your advances, right? So how do we harness the amazing talents that exist between the founder and their vision and their ability to steward everyone else's capabilities? So for me, it's really understanding the motivations and attitude of the founder rather than their behavioral traits and skill set.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm a founder myself, and I think it's testing. So when you build an idea, I think it's a great idea when to start a company, and all of the things that come around it. I think what helped us a lot was to I guess test, go out to potential partners, customers, investors, and when I think back 4 years ago, Ronak, Leslie, myself, the three co-founders went to the Bay Area for a couple months. We didn't have a product yet. We had an idea, we had a small prototype, and we were not shy to go to the biggest VC firms, to some of the biggest corporations, knock on the door. We always get meetings and just present what we thought we were doing, get some feedback, and really shape our thesis until we actually started the company. So one thing that I believe is really, really important is not to keep everything, for yourself until you think it's perfect, because it never is. It always changes. You spoke about pivots, which happens all the time. To just wiggle your way around until you find it's the right path. So from the very beginning, really go out and test, I'd say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maya.
The first question you need to ask yourself when you're thinking about starting a company is, do you like roller coasters? Because it's going to be a very wild ride of emotions all the way through. And so if you're a type of person that likes wild roller coasters, startup is the right thing for you. For me personally, it's been the most exciting and exhilarating experience of my entire life. So I like roller coasters. It's great. And the second thing is, you'll have to forget about the notion of work-life balance. You'll have to start thinking more about work-life harmony, because you'll always be thinking about the company. So roller coasters and harmony, those are the two words.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely there's a roller coaster. Well, this is the last question. What's the best way to contact you for the audience or the people who are watching?
So LinkedIn, just put my name there, or just come to our website, causalens.com, and we can get in touch.
Same. So Maya Pindeos on LinkedIn. That's best, and then also humanizingautonomy.com. You can contact us directly.
Yeah, mark@savest.earth or LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So questions from the audience. Please don't be shy. We've got great three fantastic panelists.
Hi. Question to Maya about the humanising of the autonomy. I just wanted to know where in the hierarchy of instruction that you wanted your technology to sit, and how that was a benefit to the manufacturers of robotics and the operators of robotics.
So essentially the technology sits either on locally on the chip or plugs in over the cloud. In any case, the features, so for instance, the prediction element or analysis of insights and behaviors as packaged as an SDK, and then in many cases where we're installed in forward collision systems and video telematics systems running locally and helping our customers who are then the system providers drive alerts or generate insights, or in other cases we're plugging over the cloud. So essentially, when locally sitting near to camera, but installed on SoC, and when over the cloud, plugged in over the cloud service that of your choice.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got one. How do you deal with the amount of CVs that you talked about? You've talked about having to get the top talent. If you've got 0.01 hire rate, what kind of technology you use, and what kind of predictions does that give you?
Yes, we figured out a causal drivers for what makes a good candidate, but we have a lot of automation from at all parts of the process, from automated screening to automated testing, but some parts cannot be automated as well. So we spend quite a lot of time on talent. So yeah, it's a bit of automation, a lot of hard work from the team, and obviously as the team is getting bigger, you have more resources, so you can scale the efforts.
Oh, well, I love the fact you were able to. Part of your advantage has been using your own technology to scale your talent.
Yeah, sometimes we also use it to figure out, who is the best lead to sell to and things like that.
Really interesting. Thank you. Does anyone else have a? Oh, fantastic. you say who you are?
So I'm Ria Khan, I work at Technation on the programme. So I've got a question to all of you actually. So it's touching on talent again. So you mentioned the race to talent. What advice would you give to our younger scale-ups, so our pre-Series A companies, to attract the best talent? So I'll ask Maya first, if that's okay.
So attract best. I mean, it's really around building out what you call employer branding, right? I mean, it sounds very corporate, but like building out what the company stands for. There's so many companies out there, and we're all competing against the Googles and Microsofts and like all the massive companies in this world, plus all the startups, scale-ups out there. So I think it's just important to position yourselves and find your language of what you stand for as a company. And I do think that is a really, really important drive in attracting the right people. Because ultimately, when I've looked for jobs in the past, it's also not just who's hiring for position X, but who's hiring for something that I believe in, and vision and positioning of the company. It's critical.
Brilliant, thank you, Maya. I'll ask Darko next, if that's okay.
Yes, definitely everything that Maya said is absolutely the case. I think people want to join a mission-driven enterprise and they want to contribute in that. So I think for early hires, that's really, really, really important. I will more on the practical side. I would suggest to other companies to hire some internal resources to help with talent. I think it's very hard to rely just on external agencies and things like that. So getting someone really strong internally to help scale the efforts, it's a big effort. So the reality is it's a lot of hard work. There's no cheat codes. So you need resources to make sure the hard work happens. And yeah.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mark, do you have any advice as well?
Yeah, so we can't compete on a sort of frontal manner with the big guys. So you've got to think of it a little bit smart. So the first thing is each individual that you've hired and you've done a really good job hiring has a network. And that's worked really, really successfully for us. So one company that we hired for one of our chief engineers on a specific product has now been carefully hiring out of that business because guess what? They were all interested in what we were doing. The other thing is that we're connecting not through people's skill sets, but subtle understanding of what interests them. So we're trying to differentiate between really, really smart data engineers and really, really smart data engineers whose in their hobbies or their private lives are interested in climate. And they're in those social groups. So we're tapping the social groups because we know that the talent sits behind there. Because we need people that are passionate about the subject matter as well and not just have the capability. Just two areas. And of course, Technation, great navigational process to get talent. So we partner a lot.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really valuable.
Thank you. Oh, we have one more.
Thank you. For Maya, I hope my question makes sense. Do you, or rather to all of you guys, do you ever see sort of like the use of AI being implemented in sort of like people's day-to-day tasks? Just because I hope I have this correct, like for humanizing autonomy, I'm just wondering for people who are visually impaired, if maybe your product could fit into their daily lives with sort of like what you offer on a day-to-day, or maybe in like self-enclosed units and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks. So yeah, definitely. So I think I've been giving a lot of kind of road examples today. We're not really a road-focused company, but I'll just give another one. So day-to-day lives at first. Yes, we're implemented in things like systems in a truck or in a bus to help prevent an accident and so on. And we're So that's the kind of the day-to-day, a lot of the day-to-day work where, vehicles traveling around, making sure that the street is safer. Now, there's a lot of work also being done, particularly with impairments, to give an example. So particularly on the data set side, and which is essentially foundations of a lot of the algorithms, making sure that we account for different levels of road use, from wheelchairs, other levels of disabilities, and so on, to make sure that any safety system or any system is able to understand this to a certain granularity, to give feedback to people with disabilities or account for people with disabilities. So there's a lot more to be done, but we are heavily focusing on that, because ultimately in any environment where there's people, we can't just say people or and so on. We really need to be very granular around the different needs and different requirements and make sure that our algorithms are actually accounting for that.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank the panel. Mark, Maya, Darko, that was amazing. Sam, great questions. A really inspirational way to finish, I think. I think the stage is drawing to a close now. There's been so many great examples of how to scale intelligence, whether it's in hardware, ops, deployment. There's been so many different talks here, and each one has been very, very different, and it gives a real sense of possibility for what we can do. But running through all of it, and I've seen a lot of that during the panel here, is this theme of trust, culture, collaboration. And so that's really the note that I'd like to end on. I've been Tanya Duarte. I work for We in AI, but the thing that I'd like to make everyone here aware of is a project we're working on called betterimagesofai.org, where we are collecting, we've commissioned images from briefs that are given by technical people, by people that really work with AI and want to explain. One of the questions in the panel, I think, was about how do we communicate what AI actually is to people, once we've defined it. And images like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say it again, but images like this don't necessarily help with that. So it would be fantastic if we could, also collaborate, and anyone here on submitting any images or just working with the brief. So it's betterimagesofai.org. It's a blog at the moment. We're launching a site in a month's time, and it's a collaboration with BBC, R&D, various universities and independents. So just a link there, as I've been here all day listening to the same themes come through, and definitely trust and understanding of AI as being one of them. So yeah, fantastic to hear from you. I don't know if there's anything else to say other than another round of applause, and yeah, thank you very much for coming today. Thanks to the AI Summit, and it's been great to get out in the real world again.